Ellie, you've been in the digital marketing for the last 15 years. You wrote the book called Marketing Matters. So you know a lot about marketing, right? And a lot of people in our community, they struggle with how to get the first client, how to position themselves. So we could give them a few ideas and tips on how to actually tackle this greatest challenge. Because in recruiting, you can be a great recruiter, but if you don't have any clients, what is it good for, right? So what would be your suggestion? What should people who are great in recruiting but don't have any client, what should they do first?
One of the things that I'll probably start with is to ask themselves what makes them great at recruiting and to apply that to them recruiting a client. Because chances are is very often the customer service, the attention to detail, the in-depth research. And if you could apply this in your own doing, I think that that's going to help you get the first customer. Of course, one of the things to definitely keep an eye on is your network, because very often we forget who is in our network, especially on LinkedIn. We have hundreds of connections, and there's someone that we clicked with probably 5 years ago, but because we have moved companies, so we're no longer in touch, and perhaps they have moved companies since, and therefore there might be an opportunity. So definitely look at who is in your current network, because at least you already have the relationship there, and then that's the closer go to market. Now, if you wanted to have a look further, which you should do at some point anyway, is it's good to have an outreach campaign to contact people that perhaps are looking for your services, but they don't know about you just yet. And one of the ways to do it is to go to one of the data aggregator companies, which could be different ones for the different industries. Now, there's one that is Zoom Info, which is very expensive. So I think that to start with, maybe not that one. But Apollo.io is a very good one, very cost effective. And you could get the audience right, which, yeah, that's something to mention as well. Make sure that when you reach out to people, you have the audience right. So who would be the decision maker? Find the list of those people and create a campaign around that.
Mm-hmm. It's great that you mentioned this, and we also use Apollo in our company. One of the challenges we also face, and I'm sure lots of other recruiters will as well, is like how to differentiate the services, right? Because on the surface, it's just recruiting, especially in IT. I mean, the IT professionals are pretty much the same, right? Whether you are in Poland, especially in this remote work. So plenty of the same messages land in the CTO's inboxes, so the IT directors' inboxes. So how to stand out, how to even position the company? Can we even say company? Some of the recruiters just start a new business and they are freelancers, so they just use their own name. So how they should stand out in the crowd?
That's a very good question, and I think that you're right that when it comes to how to stand out, everyone has different approach in it. What I'd probably suggest is define your niche. I mean, I understand that it's IT recruitment, but what is it? Is it CRM? Is it project management? Is it .NET? What is going to be your niche? Because the more you focused, the more you'll be able to be relevant in the space. And if you were to be able to say that like for example me, I'm an expert in HubSpot, and I'm a HubSpot certified trainer. I have a company that is a HubSpot partner agency, gold partner. I am a HubSpot community champion. I am HubSpot magic maker. So if you were to look for my name, chances are one of the references to it will be from HubSpot, which means that if I want to come and sell to you HubSpot, you know that is true because I'm everywhere. And those different validations. I have a number of certifications. So I think that if people could find their niche, And if they could prove that they have made a difference in that niche, that's going to help them stand out. Now, another option would be to look for collaborations. So, for example, because sometimes, especially solopreneurs, they think that the value that they could add to a company, it's only limited to what they can add. And in fact, it could be based on the network they have. For example, if you and I partner up, suddenly what you provide to your customers is expanded with my expertise as well. And obviously there could be non-disclosure agreements, non-competitive clauses, so that the different structures that you can put in place to make sure that no one else in your space will have access to me. They might have access to someone else, but they will not have access to me. And as I said, I have the credentials to help your clients. So the more your clients grow, the more vacancies they'll have to fill in, and therefore the more they'll come back to you. So suddenly you help the company not only by hiring the talent, but how to grow so that there's more talent to hire. Does it make sense?
Oh, totally. I mean, these partnerships and collaborations, that's a big thing. And people may also wonder what could be an example of such collaboration. So if we imagine, say, the client would be a technology startup, some high-tech startup, or it could be a fintech company. So inside the company, there are IT managers, CTOs, who are the clients, right? So, and then on the other side is the tech recruiter who is looking for a new client. So I'm just thinking out aloud, what could be an example of such a partnership? Like, who would you suggest to partner with so that the client would benefit from it? Because, I mean, for the recruiter, it probably doesn't make sense to pair with your marketing services as an example, right? Because the client, the IT manager, he or she doesn't need the marketing services. They may need, I don't know, maybe some more guidance about how to run a tech team, probably. So maybe a coach from that space. Is that what you mean? Like, how would you suggest even to think about these partnerships?
That's a great point. Yeah, coaching is also something that is beneficial, obviously, across all businesses and in all departments. So, in this example, coaching is definitely one of the things that I would recommend. So, if the tech recruiter could team up with a coach, then and it doesn't have to be a free giveaway of time. It's just a case of making sure that there is preferential rates or added bonus or whatever it might be, depending on the costs involved. Now, the other thing, especially when it comes to tech, is software. So maybe go to apollo.io and say to them, listen, I'm starting up. Could you give me a discount code for 10% or for X%? Or Notion, Asana. So look at what kind of software would your CIO, CTO, and project managers be using, and see whether you could get them a discount for that. Or whether you could get them someone, let's say if you're using Notion, could you find a way to get in touch with someone from Notion, one of the product managers, for example, to give a specific talk to your client? And then this way, again, the value that you're going to add, no one else will be able to match it because it's something unique. It's not a standard thing, and it's not a service that you offer, but you're giving them to access that otherwise they wouldn't have had it. So that's an important thing.
That's a great one. So you mean to organize some events, for example, online presentations or webinars, invite some guests, and this way provide some additional value. That's a very interesting one. Okay, cool. Okay, so coming back to how to get the first client, the first step is probably to differentiate a bit, right? As you mentioned, come up with some partnerships, use a tool like Apollo, and then what? Like, people may also get a bit discouraged when they start reaching out, as they do the cold outreach, as you just mentioned. They send 50 emails, 70 emails, 95 emails, and they are already like, oh my God, I sent so many emails. People are not responding, and those 2 people who responded wanted to unsubscribe immediately. So what are some reasonable numbers that people should expect and not get too discouraged about?
I think that the number is all about context, because first it all depends on the current market, because if there are only 200 people looking for the service in general, well, you cannot expect all of them to be looking at for it at this particular point, which means that the target audience would determine what the numbers would be. I think that when it comes to the discouraging side of things, as long as you keep track of the data and you keep refining things, you'll be able to see how you're progressing. Because you're quite right, you can't see the results straight away at times, but it's important to see some result. And I think that, and this is something that I mentioned in my book, funnily enough, that very often when we have a goal, people tend to measure, am I there yet, as opposed to how far I've come along, right? And this is where they get discouraged, because let's say you have to come from here to here, and you're not here yet, you're here, and you're thinking, I still have all that space. But actually, that should not undermine the fact that you have gone already this way, because the goalpost could move, but that's not to disregard everything that you have done so far. So I think that a little shift in the mindset there would be useful. And of course, having perhaps a CRM or a system that's going to help you track the open rates, the click-through rates, and different engagement metrics is going to help you stay a little bit more positive and on track. Because otherwise, if it's just the feeling, I sent many emails and I didn't hear much back from people. First, what is many? And if you were to send many next month, will it be just as many or would it be 20 less? So having the data is key component to success in everything and anything, basically. And I think that having this setup in a CRM or a system like HubSpot to allow you to have the data, consistently track it and measure it, because then for the people, for example, that haven't opened the email, you can send them exactly the same email, just with different subject line. And then this is how you test which subject line resonates better, whether when you focus on the value that you're going to add, whether you focus on the problem that they might have. And from there, you keep refining. But if you don't have the data, there's nothing for you to do.
Yeah, that's so true, so true. And sometimes when we have the data, and it's also difficult to assess whether this is too much or too many people respond, or whether the percentage is reasonable or not. So would you be able to share some benchmarks for people who, just ballpark numbers, like how many emails should they even send if they are looking for a new client? Like, should they send 100 emails, or should they send like 1,000 emails, or should they send 10,000 emails? Like, what are the average conversions?
Again, it's very subjective. I would probably say around 30% open rate is healthy, which then means that it all depends on how many you send out. And then depending on what you have set in the email, first, whether you have a call to action or not, because you'd be surprised at the number of emails, cold emails that are sent, that someone says, I can do that for you, kind regards. And there's no call me to arrange a catch up, or let me know if you're interested. There's not even a question, which means that in a way you've wasted your opportunity to capture the person's attention, or perhaps even add value straight away. You could say, okay, I'm a tech recruiter with 20 years of experience, and I know that I could help your company. Those are two things already that I can give you value for. To want to find out more. So all of those things, depending on what has been said in the email, that would dramatically change the engagement rates and therefore the benchmarks. Now, in terms of the numbers, I would probably say start with 100, because that's meaningful enough for you to see some patterns. As I said, be it out of the 100, only 10 open it, which is 10% open rate. And therefore, For either the next 100 or even for the remaining 90 that didn't open it, change the subject line.
Mhm.
And then if it from the 90, now you have even still 10 opening it as a percentage, that's already 12% as opposed to 10%, which means that resonates better. So for the next 100 new people, you use the second subject line that work better because you have proven for yourself, for the audience that you have, that this resonates better. And therefore, even for yourself, you could start with 10% open rate, and over the course of 3 months, you can get it to 35, 40%. So that's what I mean, that even the benchmark, it could be a little bit diluted, depending on what activities are happening. Equally, if you were to have the email campaign supported by some LinkedIn activity, maybe LinkedIn automation to view the profiles of those people, which means that when they receive an email from you, they have already had a notification that, hey, you had looked at their profile. Now that could resonate better. And so there's so many things that to be taken into consideration. And I think that's one of the good things, that there's no one size fits all, because it leaves room for creativity on how to deliver it.
Yeah. Well, now when you are elaborating on all of these steps, I'm just kind of thinking that this is a full-time job, right? For someone like you, for marketers. And yet there are recruiters who want to start freelancing. They want to start, working for clients, not just one client, for several clients.
Yeah.
And they probably underestimate how much work it will be just to get the first and the second client on board, based on what you just mentioned. And this is just the starting point anyway. Okay. And, coming back to the content of the message, actually, you were speaking about the subject. What about the content? I mean, we can see it as a spectrum of, on one side of the spectrum would be very personalized message, which someone could spend 5 minutes to craft, visit the profile, personalize the CVs, for example, of candidates already based on what is posted on the careers page. On the other side is a very generic message, as you mentioned. Hey, I'm a tech recruiter. I think I can add some value. Would you like to speak? So, based on your experience, what would you suggest? How should people decide, based on what they should decide, which way to go, and how to start sending these messages?
I would say segmentation of the database first, because out of those 100 people, let's say from the previous example, I would like to think that all of them have something in common. Be it all of them are in the same city, in the same subsector of tech, in the same recruiting for the same job, so that you can then send an email that is personalized but at scale. Again, because if you have a CRM, this is what they're designed to do. For you to have a way to say hi and then to get the first name dynamically for all those people in bulk. And to have, because you know that those segmented people that, for example, recruit for .NET developers, and therefore within the message you'll be talking about .NET. So suddenly it's personalized enough, so it's not generic, it's still at scale, and you're more likely to get better results, as opposed to, like you say, trying to craft a message for every person, and it's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah.
So segmentation and the targeting is important there.
And this can be achieved with HubSpot or Apollo?
Absolutely.
HubSpot, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, in all fairness, HubSpot is becoming easier for solopreneurs as well. Of course, it has tremendous capabilities for the enterprise accounts, where you need specialists like me who really know the technical side of things. But when it comes to people just starting up, HubSpot has very good offers in terms of pricing and functionality, even on starter packages. So they have Chatbot, which is their AI assistant for AI their AI bot, basically, that they created, and I think that they released last year at some point. Now, with that, what you could do is that you could create the emails. So you say to chatbot, I want to create an outreach email for recruitment for companies that are looking for .NET developers. I am a recruiter myself. I have this experience, which means that it creates the message for you, and you can have nurturing sequences. So it's not only one message, but you can have a list of messages that will be sent automatically to the same group of people over the course of 4 weeks, one message a week perhaps. Because it is proven that when it comes to cold outreach, rarely is the first email the successful one. People need to see a little bit about you, perhaps to give them a chance to go away, to research you, and for you to remind them of yourself again through the email, to give them some value. Because it said someone who's going to get my attention is the one who would come to me and say, listen, I saw a broken image on your website, for example. And as I have your attention, do you want to see what else you can improve on the website? So there I know that they have visited the website, but this is where we talk about a lot more personalized approach. So very often recruitment, people are after talent insights, people are after stats, after benchmarking. So if you're, as a recruiter, are able to go to a client or potential clients and say, I have a report that is for the tech talent in the area, would you be interested to see it? So at this point, you're not selling anything. You're just selling the idea of the report. And of course, if they're interested, this is how you start the conversation. And now you're the person who gave them the data. Therefore, now you establish yourself as the expert, as a person who has the knowledge and who could help them implement things.
This is so cool. This is so cool. It immediately gives value to the reader of the email, right?
Yeah.
And now I have flashbacks of all the cold emails that I receive as well. And it's like, hey, we are a company based in Asia and we have gazillions of people. Do you want any of them? Which, I mean, it's also straightforward, doesn't provide any value. And there are gazillions of these emails coming, and landing to everyone's inboxes. But by repositioning it, you give some value. It's not that difficult to prepare a report these days anyway, thanks to AI and the chatbot from HubSpot, probably.
Exactly right. Exactly. And you're making a great point that, like you said, with HubSpot, for example, you could say to the system, create a landing page. Well, first ask the chatbot, give me information about tech talent in this area, like average salary, gender, the programming languages, for example, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And have this, they go to Canva, for example, which is the free design tool, find one of their infographic templates, slot some of the data, so now it's visually appealing, and then you can go onto HubSpot and say, create a landing page to promote this report, create a contact form, so that people need to leave their email addresses to be able to get the document. And then this way, you send the email with a link to the landing page, or even directly, because obviously if you're sending the email, that means that you already have your email, their emails. However, if you want to share that landing page on your LinkedIn profile afterwards, who knows who's going to reach out to you and who's going to request that, which again, leverages the power of your network.
But even if you have the email address, you can gain, for example, the phone number, right? And even if people enter the same email address on the website, you at least know that they are interested, and then you can send them another follow-up sequence. So very interesting. Okay, well, that's great. I mean, with AI now, it's just crazy how things can be created quickly and easily, and it's just unbelievable these days. Speaking of sequences, you mentioned the first email very early. is the successful one. So then which one is usually successful? The second, the third, the fifth? Like how many emails should people be sending in a sequence?
I have seen some of the clients having successful sequences with 3 emails only. And I have seen clients that for them in their niche, it needs to be 7 or 8 emails, but it all depends on perhaps the size of the company, who you're targeting. Because the idea is that if the turnaround time for them to have the requirement is longer, or you need to keep reminding them of yourself for a longer period of time. And if it's something that, okay, if you were to want to promote the event that we mentioned a little bit earlier, if you want to promote that, 2-3 weeks is in 2-3 emails would be sufficient time, because there is a time to it, and you just want to get people on that webinar, for example, or to that event. Whereas if you just and even if that is for a cold outreach. Now, when it comes to you just introducing yourself to people, and said the more value that you can give them, at some point they're more likely to come to you. And of course, you need to make sure that you have calls to action on every single email. Now, something that I found that works is within one of the emails, one of the first ones, definitely put a testimonial. Testimonials are very powerful, exactly, because if I don't know you just yet, but if I could see that someone, you have done successful work for someone, and I could then Google that person, because I'm a person like that if they say, oh yeah, this is Mark Twain, I'm thinking, that sounds familiar, let me Google. And then suddenly, oh, it's a made up thing, or just the author, the person doesn't really exist. However, if I find the person on LinkedIn, and it's in the company that the video says that they are, I'm thinking, okay, that could be a valid testimonial, and then it will have more weight. But yeah, testimonials, definitely. The other thing, case studies. Now, when you use a case study to be the hook, in a way, to say, okay, within the first 3 months of working with the client, I saved them X amount of time on them not having to go through candidates that are not fit for purpose, or I have generated a talent pool for that client. Do you want to know how? Get in touch. So you share the results, you share the testimonial where the client confirms the results. So first you share the testimonial, the client says, yeah, you did a great job, and then you reveal what you did, actually what the results were, and then afterwards you say, well, do you want to know how? Do you want me to do it for your company? So this way it's very practical, tangible, you have the evidence to support it, and you can just build from that.
Interesting that you mentioned this what and how. So you tell them what you did, but you don't expose how you did it, right? Because it's your kind of secret sauce, right? Interesting.
Exactly. And I have this kind of phrase that I made up years ago, that in business meetings, show that you know how, but don't show you know how. And this is the principle, that demonstrate enough for people to know, oh, okay, she knows what she's doing, but don't give it all away, because otherwise, yeah,
they can do it themselves.
Yeah. And of course, do you know what? Funnily enough, though, very often people are afraid of this. That isn't to give away too much know-how, because someone could do it themselves. But the reality is that first, chances are, if they don't have your expertise, as in your years of experience and technical knowledge, they will not be able to deliver exactly like you would have, which means that ultimately they could still come back to you and say, listen, I tried, as in I can see how it could work, but I couldn't make it work. Or I love the fact that you explained all of it in detail. I can see how it can work. I don't have the resources in-house. Can you help me? Right. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, revealing the know-how. And equally, when it comes to it, if they think that, oh, who knows the system? they would know your thought process as well, and they'll have more trust in you. So there's different ways to look at it.
And that's probably similar with marketing, right? Because just by talking about the case study and the testimonials and the email sequences, it just feels so easy, like anyone could do it. But they would probably, or including me, like we would not get the same results just because it's your expertise. You've been doing it for 15 years. So yeah, it's just crazy how this actually works, right? Because on the surface, everything could be perceived as easy, but eventually it's just so hard. Anyway, okay, I mean, I could speak about this topic for probably 2-3 hours, but I also want to be mindful about your time, and maybe we could connect sometime later just to dive deeper to some of the topics after people have a chance to watch this first recording. I'm already saying first, as if we had been planning the second one, which we have not, but maybe we will have a chance. Yeah, that would be so cool.
Of course.
Yeah, what would be your kind of a final advice to someone who is really a senior tech recruiter looking for the first client, and now they may have some know-how, or not know-how, but they could see how to do it. They don't know yet. And they are enthusiastic, they are motivated to try it out, but they are all these tools. So they may be a bit overwhelmed. Like, what would be your best piece of advice to someone who is in this situation of looking for the first client, maybe even desperately needing the client, but not having anyone just yet?
A couple of things that crossed my mind. It is a tough one because you said the one piece of advice, planning and focus, definitely. So, and I think that it's good that you mentioned that some might be desperate to get the client, but if you don't have enough time to plan, that means that you might get the client that might not pay afterwards, right? Because you haven't done the planning to be able to have the due diligence to check whether the client is good for you. It's not only whether you're good for them, but it's good for you. So yeah, focus is one thing. Now the other thing, speculate to accumulate. Make sure that you have a candidate already ready. So this is why it's important for you to keep in touch with your candidates that you have placed in different places. Of course, make sure that you don't violate agreements that you've had with previous companies. But find forums, find where those tech people hang out, start building connections with them, because then you're in a better position to go to a client and say, listen, I can see you have this job on the website advertised. I have 2 people ready to go. Let's work together. That's a different proposition altogether.
Awesome. Well, this is a great advice, and I'm sure you would have a lot more if we had a chance to continue. So, so that's so cool. Yeah, thanks a lot for all your insights. And I'm just now like I was writing down as you were speaking, and I just cannot wait to start. Not probably even tomorrow, but maybe even tonight, like revisiting these case studies and just trying out some of these. Sometimes we hear about these things, and it's like, we try it, we don't see result, so we just put it somewhere on the shelf. But now when you kind of connected the dots, maybe also other people will have some case studies ready, and they will be like, oh, now I can connect the case study with Apollo and send it over to people who I haven't been engaging with. So thanks a lot for all the insights. Where can people find a bit more about you, just in case, for example, they try it out, they don't see the results, and they may need some marketing services?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Zheleva, or even just search for Zheleva on Google. You'll find my website. You'll have the company website. So my name, I think that in the English speaking world is unique enough, and I've done good enough marketing for myself that just Google it and you'll find me.
You must have good SEO, right?
Yeah, that's where I started in marketing. So absolutely.
Awesome. Oh, cool. So I'll also include the link to your LinkedIn profile and the website in the show notes. And yeah, people can also Google. Your name is really unique. So that's awesome. Great. Thanks a lot again. And yeah, I hope to see you soon again.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.